Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Olen G Barber. We're going to be discussing his amazing memoir, Caressing Old Memories. Now, it's available for purchase through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, pretty much all online book resellers. But people, listen to me. If you want to gather everything that Olen has in store, you got to head on over to his website, okay? It truly is a one-stop shop for everything that he has available. Head on over to theolenbarber.com. There you'll find more information on Olen himself, more information on this wonderful memoir, as well as find hyperlinks set up to take you to the purchasing pages. So one more time, that's theolenbarber.com. And before we go any further, I do want to take this opportunity and point out that Olen was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by one of the best advertising firms in the business. And people, if you follow me, you already know I'm talking about Quipper Prints. So listen, if you are a writer out there, you've just gotten through the gauntlet of getting your masterpiece created, and now you find yourself in a precarious position because, well, now you need help moving the book you just finished writing. Well, let me give you some fantastic advice. You know, you gotta contact Quipper Prints. I'm telling you, they're one of the best in the business to do it, and this is exactly what they specialize in. So head on over to quipperprints.com today and gather all of the ways that their fantastic team is going to help maximize your creative endeavors. And listen, people, it is a treat, okay? It is an absolute delight to have Olen here on the line with us today. Now, you see it right there in the title, okay? I mean, that's going to give you a great insight to the discussion that we're about to have. Now, an insight is all it's going to give you because I'm telling you, this book is layered, okay? And it's going to go down memory lane and really follow along Olen's life. As I mentioned, it's a memoir, okay? So we're going to be traveling alongside him in his journey through life. But I love that title because of what it represents. And of course, this book symbolizes that exactly to a T. I'm telling you, this is a beautifully written memoir about his fondest memories. But as you cycle through the Rolodex of his memories, what is naturally going to happen is it's going to force you to do the same in your life. And just as the title says, you're going to want to caress them. You're going to want to cherish them and savor them a bit, like a beautifully cooked steak and a nice glass of wine. I'm telling you, this book is something special. Well, listen, let's invite him here because I could sit here, I could talk about it for hours. Olen, first and foremost, man, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you for being a guest. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Olen, I'm fantastic, man, better than I deserve, and I truly appreciate having you here as a guest. I love what you're doing, man. I mean, listen, if it wasn't already noted in my introduction, Olen, what you're doing here is special, man. What you're doing is needed, and I think there is enough negativity that life is going to throw at you, but to take a moment and to really stop and focus on the positives, I think is something that doesn't get examined enough, something that doesn't get talked about enough. So I love what you're doing here. I love even more that we have you as a guest to discuss everything. Olen, without further ado, let's jump right in, man. This is a memoir, so learning about your background and learning about the book are going to coincide. So let's jump right into the book. Caressing Old Memories. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, well, I was born in January 1936 in a farmhouse in southern Georgia, a little town called Baxley, about 15 minutes before the doctor got there. And as I said in my book, Dad always kidded me about that being the only time in my life I ever got in a hurry. There's a lot of humor in life, and you need to remember that also. God blessed me with parents that believed in honesty, dependability, and to them, failure was not an option. You had a job to do. You found a way to do it. In most cases, your survival even depended on it. When you live in the backwoods part of this country, you're isolated from other people. in most cases, your closest neighbor is a mile or more away. Now, trying to get help in those days was a difficult task because there was no electricity, there was no telephones, no 911. As a matter of fact, we didn't even have running water. To get help, you had to go find your neighbor, and most times you didn't even know where the neighbor was. And when you're young, your parents teach you how to survive, but as you get older, life itself teaches you how to survive.
Mm-hmm.
As you mentioned earlier about old memories and friends, good friends and old memories are about the best assets you have when you get old. You want to enjoy those as much as you possibly can. You want to pull them up, enjoy them, let them make you feel good because that's what they're supposed to do. And if they're bad memories, acknowledge them, but move on. Don't let them drag you down.
Yeah.
Okay? And one of the first things I think my dad taught me and my brother was responsibility. Responsibility to take care of those things you were supposed to take care of. As I went through life, I was surprised to find out how many people I worked with that could not handle responsibility. I left home at the age of 16 years old, found a job the same day, and stayed employed until my second retirement, which was in 1994. When you live on a farm, animals can also create some unexpected risk and entertainment. In my book, I talk about the time I got tangled in the mule's harness. That was a mess. Okay. Dad also had a big red rooster that didn't like me. He would hit me every time I walked out that back door in the yard. And the fun thing I remember about was a wild hog that we had caught in the smokehouse that literally whipped me and my brother both. We also had a big billy goat. That sucker knocked me flat on my back and turned me for a loop backwards one time. And I can't forget that horse that tried to turn me into a dirt dart. There's a whole lot of things, that goes on. And I really had enjoyment writing this book about all this stuff as I was going through life. One of the things that I found out, I think everybody will learn if they go back and look through their life very much, God was always in your corner.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing he was there, because I got into a lot of difficult situations in my life. I created a lot of them myself, but I got into some. But it seemed like always just in the nick of time, something or someone would come along and straighten it all out and get you out of it. One of the ones I'd like to tell you about is I was scheduled to fly on a special trip. This was after I was in the military. I was scheduled to fly on a special trip to Europe, and I really wanted to take that trip. I'd worked for 6 months to get on that flight. The day before the flight was scheduled to depart, a stranger to the company came in and pulled me off the flight crew list and took my place. The sad part about it was that plane crashed on the way home, killing everybody on board. And I still haven't figured out why God saved me from that one. There were several other incidents that I could cover, that I do cover them in my book. Like one night, I was driving the truck hauling some farm equipment through South Georgia, and I fell asleep. I actually heard someone yell in my name so loud that as I was waking up, I yelled back, "What?" Just as I woke up just in time to see a whole bunch of cows on the road ahead of me. Somehow, I managed to miss all of them. I know that was a guardian angel.
Mm-hmm.
One night, I was riding my Harley-Davidson 74 motorcycle through North Carolina. I fell asleep riding that sucker. And when I woke up, it sounded like I'd heard a gunshot, and I was running off the road across the oncoming lane toward the ditch. But I was able to avoid the ditch, and there was nothing wrong with the motel. There wasn't a single thing in sight for miles either way. So I decided I'd get me the next motel I found and get some sleep. God gave me a good guardian angel, and I kept him busy.
Wow.
One of the things that I'm real happy about and excited about right now is we're doing an audio version of this book. I got Gary W. Stevens doing the audio part. And, man, he is doing a fantastic job, and I can't wait till that gets out. That should be out in another week or two. I had a life involving farm life, which went to living on the city streets for a while, for about a year. Going into the military, I did 20 years in the Navy, followed that up with 20 years in law enforcement. Retired from that, came back home, did 3 years on the city commission, got to be the mayor of my hometown in the year 2000, what we call the KY2. Anyway, all of that, and spending some time with my family and create some more memories. It was great. Military allowed me one thing that was, I think everyone should know. One of the things that increases your education about things is travel. In the military, I got to go through a lot of countries. I went through Japan. I stayed there 3 years. I went through Korea. I went through Philippines. I went to Australia, and I spent a lot of time going in and out of Hong Kong. And it's amazing how much you can learn from the customs of other people as you go through those.
Yeah.
I know I needed an education because my parents didn't get an education. And I got very little education because things were very difficult on our farm when I was growing up. And I started trying to take advantage of every opportunity I had to get an education. And that led me to some very exciting places and give me a chance to work and study and learn from people of really good quality education. I worked with the court systems when I was in law enforcement. I worked with some of the best judges, got one-on-one counseling and guidance from them. And by the time I got out of the military, I couldn't believe the stuff that I had created. Everyone that I worked with was telling me, you got to write a book about this someday. Well, that wasn't on my bucket list, but it came on my bucket list when I retired. And so on January 1st of 2023, I retired from everything I was doing, which included my radio work that I was doing at that time, just to write this book. And guess what? It's done.
Olen, thank you very much for everything that you've stated. And people, listen, I'm telling you, we could not have selected a more perfect embodiment of a person of distinction to be on our network. Truly, man, every single one of those memories that you have discussed already, each one of them can be a book in its own right. There's so much happening here. And people, we've barely scratched the surface, okay? Amazon, Barnes & Noble, theolenbarber.com are the places you have to go. Head on over there today. Pick up your copies of Caressing Old Memories by Olen G Barber, because this is something special. And one thing that you mentioned amongst a plethora of things that were so valuable, but you talked about how life offers education, right? And I'm paraphrasing, but I mean, that's one of the messages that you started off by discussing. And Olen, that really struck me because so much of the education that we receive does not happen inside a classroom, right? I mean, a lot of it does. Don't get me wrong. I'm not devaluing education, but life has so much wisdom that it's going to offer. Now, that wisdom may not come in the shape or form that you want it to come in, but life is going to teach you some things through experiences.
One of the things that I would like to point out is that when I went into law enforcement, that was my best opportunity for education.
Yeah.
Outside of what the military was teaching me, which was character and technical stuff and how to do things. But when I got to the Sheriff's Department training program, in which we got to attend some of the best seminars in the country, and the county paid for them. And I had developed a system to where I would go take the class and then turn around and convert it into a lesson and teach it to the other employees. So that helped me get a ton of information from a lot of people.
You know, Olen, I listen, I believe it. I mean, what you're talking about here, and you specifically brought up law enforcement, not only the training that you're going to receive in preparation for law enforcement, but also the day-to-day experiences that you're going to have, right? I mean, that's going to teach you not only about yourself, but also about others in your surrounding communities. There is so much there. You know, another point that you brought up is talking about traveling and how much you learned about just being immersed in different cultures. And I have been one that has always felt that, right? I started to travel later in life. But once I got the bug, man, I was all over the place. And I traveled to a lot of places here in America, but also a lot of places internationally. And I tell younger family members, nieces and nephews, whenever I have the opportunity, and just people in my inner circle, whenever I have the opportunity, I think one of the best experiences you can have is traveling to a different country, seeing how other people live and other customs that different cultures have. Because when you do that, not only are you enriching yourself by being immersed in it, but you're also creating value for your own customs and your own background. There is something so enriching about that entire experience. So I love the fact that you brought that up. And people, listen, I told you, man, this is something special. We've barely scratched the surface. And oh my goodness, I could sit here, I could talk to Olen for hours. And I got to keep reminding myself, Benji, this is not about you, okay? I'm going to hone it back in here, wheel that back a little bit. Olen, curiosity for myself here, man, but what would you say was a highlight for you? Either through the memories that you've shared, writing the book, getting it published. What was a highlight for you throughout this entire process? Or if not a highlight, maybe something that surprised you that you weren't anticipating?
Well, there's just so many things that you're so grateful for.
Yeah.
I like to give a plug to someone who gave me a lot of inspiration, Dr. Napoleon Hill. He wrote a book called Think and Grow Rich.
Absolutely.
And he had a educational program called The Science of Personal Achievement. I was fortunate enough to get to work on his staff, and that's the only way I could attend his lectures and attend some of his lectures. And it's all about positive attitude, but it widens your vision, gives you a peripheral vision that you can see a lot of things that you never thought about before. That made a big difference in my life, and I guess the highlight of my life was to see that develop. And another one, I guess the key one element was to go through all your life, come home, go back to the same hometown where you was a farmer and a sharecropper, and when you grew up there, and come back and get to be mayor of that hometown. Mm-hmm. That, to me, was my highlight.
I'm an artist myself. I'm in a different medium, but my background is in filmmaking, and I'm an actor by trade. And I love it because, of course, it allows me to live in my imagination. So my next question as we close out is probably one of my favorite ones to ask. And it's going to take a little bit of a different churn here with you because your book is a memoir. So these are all things that you've actually experienced. They're not fabricated by any stretch of the imagination. But Olen, if you could jump into the book that you've created and you had your option to choose amongst any one of the pages in your book, which page would you choose to go back into and relive, and why?
That would be a very difficult question to ask. I always had a love for music, and I did learn to play country music, and I got involved in that. And when I got into Japan, I got to play with a lot of the top country experts and also learn from them. And I really enjoyed that. That was also when I met my wife. And I believe that if I had to go back to time, it would be to go back to that time and try to do that a little better.
There you have it. I love that question because, again, it forces you to jump back in, right, and choose. Now, what's difficult about that question, and especially in your case, because, again, all of these things actually happened, but as an artist, I know myself that it's difficult to choose one particular project out of all of them, right? And say, this is the one that I would redo, or this is the one that I would relive, because, again, they become like children. You cherish all of them. So to have one is a very difficult one. But thank you very much for entertaining me. I appreciate all of that. And people, you know what I appreciate even more is we're at the end of the interview now, and we have discussed so much information, but yet, as I said to you before, we've barely scratched the surface. There's a lot happening here, and there's only one way for you to figure it all out. You got to head on over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, theolenbarber.com, and purchase your copies today. I'm telling you, this is something that it has me hooked. And I know so many of you out there are just like me. You've been at the edge of your seat, listening intently to everything that has been stated. Well, now the onus is on you. The responsibility falls on you to purchase your copies of Caressing Old Memories and fill in all the gaps. Because listen, this is much bigger than a literary creation. That it is, right? You're going to be learning about Olen's life. But it's going to force you to reflect upon your own. Whether you're young or old, This book carries so much weight in learning from his story, but also reflecting upon your own. Olen, this has been a true pleasure, man, an absolute delight. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
You're welcome, and may God bless you. Keep up the good work.